The forest was dark and quiet, only the sound of leaves moving in the night wind. A human traveler named Daniel walked slowly through the shadows. Carrying a small lantern, he had been hunting for food, but tonight he found nothing, only silence. As he turned toward the path back home, a faint noise reached his ears. It was soft, broken, like someone crying but trying not to be heard. Daniel stopped, listening carefully. The sound came again, high-pitched. Shaky like a child in pain, he followed the noise. Stepping carefully between roots and fallen branches, finally, near a broken tree trunk. He saw movement. Something small was curled up under the wood. Trembling, he lowered his lantern there, hiding in the dirt. Was a tiny creature, an alien girl. Her skin was pale blue. Her eyes large and glowing faintly in the dark. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, and her little body shook with fear. When the light touched her, she looked up, and her eyes widened in terror. Daniel raised a hand slowly, showing he meant no harm, but before he could speak, the alien let out a sharp cry. "Please, please don't eat me," she screamed, covering her head. Her voice was broken, her words trembling as if she had practiced them before. Daniel froze in shock. He knelt down. Keeping his distance, "I won't hurt you," he said gently, his voice low. But the alien girl shook her head, rocking back and forth. "Humans eat us," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They always eat us." Daniel's heart ached at her words. What kind of lies had been told to her? He placed his lantern on the ground and slowly opened his bag. From it, he pulled out a piece of bread, simple and warm. He pushed it forward on the ground and stepped back. The alien girl stared at the bread as if it was poison. Her tiny hands gripped her knees tighter, her breathing quickened. Her glowing eyes fixed on Daniel. He could see every bone in her thin body. She was starving, yet she didn't dare touch the food. Daniel sat down cross-legged on the ground, making himself small. He took another piece of bread from his bag. This time, he bit into it slowly, chewing in silence. The girl's eyes followed his every move. He swallowed, then placed the half piece on the ground. Minutes passed. The forest silent except for the distant cry of night birds. The girl shifted slowly, her body shaking as she moved closer. Her hands stretched out, thin and trembling, but at the last moment, she pulled it back. Her fear was stronger than her hunger. Daniel sighed. He did not move closer. Instead, he leaned back against a tree and closed his eyes. If she would not trust him tonight, then maybe tomorrow. But one thing was clear. She was alone, weak and afraid. The wind grew colder, and the tiny alien hugged herself tightly. Daniel noticed her shivering, her bare feet pressed into the dirt. He took off his jacket and placed it carefully near her without a word. Then he returned to his spot and sat down again. The girl stared at the jacket, confused. Slowly, she pulled the fabric closer. Wrapping herself inside it for the first time, Daniel saw her body stop shaking. She peeked over the collar, watching him with wide eyes. He smiled softly. Not saying anything, the firelight of his lantern made his face look calm. Not dangerous. The night passed slowly. Daniel stayed awake, listening to the forest. Once, a low growl came from the trees. Yellow eyes appeared in the dark, a beast hunting for food. The girl froze, pressing herself deeper under the broken trunk. Daniel stood up quickly. He grabbed a burning branch from the lantern's flame and waved. The beast snarled but backed away from the light. With a final growl, it disappeared into the night. Daniel returned. Placing the branch into the fire pit he had built, the girl's eyes were wide. She had seen everything, how the human fought, not for himself, but for her safety. She slowly relaxed inside his jacket, her breathing calmer now. Daniel glanced at her one last time, then leaned against the tree again. He closed his eyes, letting sleep take him. The tiny alien girl did not sleep. She watched him through the whole night. Her heart was confused. This human did not eat her. Instead, he gave her food, warmth, and protection. Her lips moved silently, whispering the words to herself. Why? Why is he kind? The forest stayed quiet until dawn, but in that silence, a small seed of trust had been planted. And though the girl did not know it yet, her life had already changed forever. The morning sun rose slowly, its golden light breaking through the thick forest trees. Daniel stretched his arms and rubbed his eyes, the chill of the night still clinging to his skin. When he turned his head, the first thing he noticed was his jacket, no longer lying on the ground but wrapped tightly around a tiny alien girl. She was still curled up beneath the broken tree trunk, her large glowing eyes watching him cautiously. For a moment, Daniel said nothing, afraid to break the fragile trust of the night before. "Good morning," he whispered softly, his voice gentle. The alien girl flinched at the sound. Pulling the jacket closer around her body, her lips moved, trembling. "Don't eat me," she repeated in a small, broken voice. Daniel's heart sank. Hearing her words again like a painful echo of fear, he shook his head slowly, pointing at himself. Then at the bread still lying uneaten near her feet. "I'm not here to eat you," he said, but she only stared. Her hands gripped the jacket tighter, her knuckles pale. She looked so small, so fragile. Like even a strong breeze might carry her away. Daniel tore off another piece of bread and placed it gently on a rock closer to her hiding spot. Then he sat back, keeping his distance, showing her he would not force her to take it. Minutes passed. In silence, broken only by the sound of birds singing high above. The girl's eyes darted between him and the bread. Fear and hunger fighting inside her. Finally, her tiny fingers stretched out from the jacket, shaking as they reached for the food. She touched it, pulled back, then touched it again, as if expecting it to burn her at last. She grabbed it quickly and stuffed the piece into her mouth. The taste made her freeze. It was soft, warm. Nothing like the bitter roots and dirty water she had survived on. Her glowing eyes widened in shock as she chewed for the first time since. Meeting her, Daniel saw something new on her face. Confusion. Not fear. The bread was not poison. The human's food did not kill her. Daniel smiled gently, taking another bite of his own piece to show her it was safe. The girl's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her eyes still held doubt. She swallowed hard, then whispered, "But humans, they eat us." I saw it. Her voice cracked, her tiny body trembling with the weight of her words. Daniel frowned, leaning closer, but still careful not to scare her. "Who told you that?" he asked softly. The girl hugged herself, her glowing eyes filling with tears. They said, "When humans come, people disappear. They never come back." Her voice broke into sobs, and she hid her face in the jacket. Daniel felt a cold anger rise inside him, not at her, but at the cruel lies that had poisoned her young mind. He wanted to comfort her, but he knew sudden movements might push her away. So instead, he spoke gently. "Sometimes people disappear for other reasons, not because of humans." She peeked out at him through wet lashes, her eyes doubtful. Daniel added, "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it last night. But instead, I protected you." He pointed at the broken branch still blackened from the fire. The memory of the beast's yellow eyes still fresh. The girl's lips parted, but no words came. Her mind was fighting against years of fear and stories told to her. Daniel reached into his bag once more and pulled out a small canteen of water. He took a sip, then placed it near the bread. Stepping back again, the girl stared at it, then slowly crawled forward on her knees. Still wrapped in the jacket, her little hands took the canteen, her eyes flicking to Daniel as if asking for permission. He nodded with a warm smile. She lifted it to her lips and drank, her throat moving quickly as she swallowed the cool water. When she stopped, a drop ran down her chin. And for the first time, she looked almost human. But then the fear returned, and she shoved the canteen back as if ashamed of accepting his kindness. Daniel did not force her. He simply leaned back and said, "You don't have to be afraid of me." But the girl's reply was sharp. "Broken, I have too. Humans take children. Humans eat them." Her voice cracked with fear, so deep it made Daniel's chest tighten. It was clear her fear was not only from lies, but from something she had seen herself. Daniel's mind raced. Could there be humans out there cruel enough to harm her people? Or had her kind twisted the truth, making monsters out of humans to control their young? He could not know, but he did know one thing: this child deserved better than fear and hunger. He would show her with actions, not just words. As the sun climbed higher, the girl stayed close to her hiding spot. But Daniel noticed something different. Though she still looked afraid, she no longer hid her face completely. Her glowing eyes followed him wherever he went. Curious, even in her terror, it was a small change, but an important one that night. When Daniel lit a new fire, the girl crept a little closer. Still wrapped in his jacket, she sat near the edge of the light. Her body trembled with every snap of the flames. But she did not run. Daniel said nothing, letting her choose the distance, and in that silence, trust began to grow slowly, painfully, but surely. The girl's last whisper before she closed her eyes carried into the quiet night. "I don't want to be eaten, but maybe not all humans are monsters." Daniel heard her words and smiled faintly. It was not full trust, not yet, but it was the first step. And steps, no matter how small, could change everything. The second night in the forest was colder than the first. The wind moved through the trees like whispers, carrying the sound of faraway creatures. Daniel sat near the fire, adding small branches to keep the flames alive. He glanced to his side and saw the tiny alien girl wrapped tightly in his jacket. Sitting just within the circle of light, she hugged her knees, eyes half open, watching the fire but still flicking toward him every few seconds. Her body was shaking, not just from the cold, but from fear. Daniel could see it clearly. Her trust was thin like glass that could shatter at any moment. He wanted to speak, but he knew too many words might only push her further away. So he stayed quiet, letting the firelight and warmth do the talking for him. Sometimes silence was the only way to build trust. In the middle of the night, the sound of heavy footsteps broke the calm. The girl's eyes widened, glowing brighter as her small body stiffened. Daniel stood quickly, grabbing his lantern and a thick branch from the fire. From the shadows, a low growl echoed, and two yellow eyes appeared between the trees. It was the beast again, larger than a wolf, its body covered in rough scales and fur. The girl whimpered, pressing herself back against the tree trunk. Daniel stepped forward, holding the burning branch high. The beast lunged, snapping its teeth, but Daniel shouted and swung the flame. Ah! The fire hissed, sparks flying, and the creature roared in frustration. Finally, with a deep growl, it backed away into the darkness, its eyes fading into the trees. When silence returned, Daniel dropped the branch into the fire and turned back. The girl was staring at him with wide eyes, her small chest rising and falling quickly. For a moment, her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came. Daniel knelt down, showing his empty hands, his voice calm. "It's gone now. You're safe." The girl blinked, her glowing eyes softening for the first time. That night, she did not run from him. Instead, she crawled closer to the fire, her small hands stretched out toward the warmth. Daniel said nothing, just smiled faintly and added more wood. Her trembling slowed as she soaked in the heat, and her breathing grew steady. For the first time, Daniel saw her eyelids grow heavy, as if sleep was stronger than fear. When dawn came, Daniel woke to find her still sleeping, curled on the ground near the fire, His jacket wrapped her like a cocoon, and her tiny face looked softer. Less frightened, he almost didn't move, afraid of breaking the fragile piece. But the smell of smoke fading reminded him he had to find more wood and food. Quietly, he stood and stepped away, leaving his bag nearby. Hours later, when he returned, he found something surprising. The girl was awake, sitting near the bag. Staring at the food he had left, her tiny fingers touched a piece of dried fruit. Hesitated, then pulled it toward her. She looked around, as if checking to see if it was a trick. Then, finally, she ate, her glowing eyes widening at the taste. When Daniel stepped back into view, her body stiffened, but instead of spitting out the fruit or throwing it away, she held it tightly. Her lips parted nervously, and she whispered, "Why? Why are you giving this to me?" Daniel crouched down, careful not to move too close. "Because you're hungry," he said simply. The girl's eyes narrowed, as if waiting for more. But there was no trick, only truth. She chewed slowly, never taking her eyes off him. The silence stretched, heavy with something unspoken. Finally, her small voice broke it. "No human ever gave me food before. Only took things." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. He answered softly, "Then maybe I'm not like other humans." The girl lowered her gaze, her tiny hands clutching the piece of fruit. For the first time, Daniel saw her body relax, not completely, but enough. It was the smallest sign of trust, like the first drop of rain before a storm. She pulled his jacket tighter around herself, hiding half her face, but her eyes peeked over the collar, watching him with something new: curiosity. Not only fear. That evening, when Daniel built the fire again, she did something unexpected. Instead of waiting at a distance, she picked up a small branch and dropped it onto the flames. Her hands shook as she did it, as if unsure if she was. Aloud, Daniel smiled warmly and nodded. "Good," he said, his voice kind. The girl blinked, and for the first time, she gave a faint, shy smile. It was small, but to Daniel, it was like the brightest light in the forest. He knew it was the beginning of something greater, something fragile but powerful. The girl no longer whispered, "Don't eat me," whenever he looked at her. Instead, she stayed close, listening to the sound of his voice. Even if she said little back, her fear was still there. But now, shared space with something new: hope. As the fire crackled in two, the night, Daniel lay back against a tree, watching the stars. The tiny alien girl curled up nearby, her small frame resting in the glow of the flames. Her eyes closed slowly, and before sleep took her, she whispered words so soft he almost missed them. "Thank you, human." And with that, the first wall between them finally began to fall. Days passed slowly in the forest, each one testing the fragile thread of trust between the human and the tiny alien girl. Daniel continued to gather food, hunt small animals, and keep the fire alive, while the girl began to watch his every move with quiet eyes. She still did not speak much, but her silence was no longer filled only with fear. Now it carried curiosity, and sometimes even wonder. Every night she sat closer to the fire, and every morning she peeked into his bag to see what food he carried. It was a slow dance of distance and closeness, like two worlds circling each other. One morning, Daniel returned with a handful of berries, their red skins glowing under the sunlight. The girl's eyes lit up, but her small hands hesitated to take them. Daniel held out one berry, ate it himself, then placed the rest in a small wooden bowl he had carved. The girl stared at the bowl as if it were treasure, her hands trembling. As she reached out and pulled it close, when she finally ate one, her face softened, and a small sound escaped her lips: a laugh. Quiet and fragile, but real. Daniel froze, the sound surprising him. The girl covered her mouth instantly, as if afraid of what she had done. But Daniel smiled warmly and said, "It's good to hear you laugh." Her glowing eyes blinked, unsure if laughter was safe, but then her lips curved again. A tiny smile hidden behind his jacket for the first time. She looked like a child, not a creature filled with fear, as days turned into a week. The bond between them grew stronger. The girl began to mimic Daniel's actions, drinking from the stream when he did, copying the way he washed his hands. She even tried to carry sticks for the fire, though her small arms could barely lift them. Daniel never stopped her, only praised her softly. Good work. Each word of kindness broke another piece of the wall that had trapped her heart. At night, she sometimes leaned closer to the warmth of his fire. Her glowing eyes reflected the flames, filled with a mix of fear and comfort. Daniel noticed she no longer whispered, "Don't eat me," when he moved. Instead, she watched his face as if trying to read the truth in his eyes. Sometimes she would whisper, "Why?" but never finish the question. One evening, when the stars shone bright above, Daniel took a small piece of wood and began carving. The girl watched silently, her head tilting as shavings fell into his lap. After a while, he held up the finished shape, a small wooden bird with wings spread wide. He placed it gently near her, saying nothing. Her glowing eyes widened, and she picked it up carefully, as if it might break in her hands. For a long time, she only stared at it, her lips parting, as if she had forgotten how to speak. Finally, she whispered, "Why give this to me?" Daniel answered simply, "Because everyone deserves something that belongs only to them." The girl's hands shook as she held the toy close to her chest. She turned away, hiding her face in the jacket. But Daniel saw the tears shining in her eyes. The next morning, she surprised him. When Daniel woke, the girl was already awake, crouched near the stream. She had gathered a few bright flowers in her tiny hands, their colors glowing against her pale blue skin. When Daniel sat up, she walked slowly toward him and placed the flowers near his bag. She whispered, "For you," before hurrying back to her spot. Daniel smiled, touched by her gift. It was not much in the eyes of the world, but it was everything to him. It meant she trusted him enough to give something back, even if it was small. The wooden bird and the flowers became symbols between them, signs that their bond was real, signs that kindness could grow even in the darkest places. But not all shadows were gone. One evening, while Daniel was sharpening his knife, the girl sat quietly and asked in a small voice, "Why did you not take me away like others?" Her words made Daniel's hands still, his heart tightening at the hidden fear inside them. He looked at her, his voice steady, "Because you are not something to take. You are someone to protect." Her glowing eyes widened, her lips trembling. For a moment, she looked ready to cry again, but instead, she moved closer to him. Her small hands touched his sleeve, just for a second, before she pulled away quickly. It was the first time she had reached out on her own. Daniel did not chase the moment, but he felt it deeply. She was learning to trust. That night, she did not sleep far away. She curled up only a few steps from him, her tiny frame lit by the glow of the fire. Her whisper floated into the silence. Before sleep claimed her, maybe? "Not all humans are monsters," she said softly. And Daniel, smiling faintly, whispered back, "No, not all." The bond between them had started as a fragile thread, but now it was becoming a rope, strong enough to hold, strong enough to pull her from the pit of fear she had been thrown into. But Daniel knew the forest was not the only danger. Waiting for them, somewhere beyond the trees, eyes were watching, and footsteps were already on their way. The true test of their bond was coming, and soon they would both face it together. The forest had grown quiet, too quiet. Even the birds that usually sang in the morning were gone, leaving only the rustle of leaves. Daniel felt it first. A strange weight in the air, a silence that carried warning. He glanced at the tiny alien girl who sat near the fire, holding the wooden bird he had carved for her. Her glowing eyes flickered nervously, as if she felt the same unease. That afternoon, Daniel decided to move them deeper into the forest. He gathered his bag, food, and water, while the girl followed closely, clutching his jacket around her small frame. Her steps were light, but every snap of a twig made her flinch. Daniel whispered softly, "Stay close to me," and she nodded, her lips pressed tightly together. But no amount of care could keep danger away as the sun began to set. Voices echoed through the trees, rough, sharp voices speaking in a language Daniel did not understand. The girl froze instantly, her entire body trembling. Her glowing eyes filled with terror, and she whispered a single word: "Hunters." Her voice cracked as if the word itself carried years of pain. Daniel quickly pulled her behind a fallen log. He crouched low, listening as the voices drew nearer. Heavy footsteps crunching the forest floor. Soon, 3 figures appeared. Tall aliens carrying weapons made of bone and metal. Their armor was crude but strong, their eyes hard and searching. They looked like predators hunting prey. The girl's small hands clutched Daniel's sleeve tightly, her nails digging into the fabric. "They are looking for me," she whispered in panic. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he watched them. One of the hunters shouted something, and the others spread out, scanning the trees. They were searching carefully, determined not to leave without their target. The girl buried her face in Daniel's side, her tiny body shaking. "They will take me back," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks, her voice cracked. "They will hurt me again. Or worse." Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice firm. "I won't let them take you." She looked up at him in shock, as if no one had ever said those words before. The hunters moved closer, their weapons glinting in the fading light. One of them noticed the remains of the campfire. Crouching down to inspect the ashes, he shouted, and the others turned toward the trail Daniel had left. They were getting closer. Step by step, Daniel knew hiding would not work. For long, he motioned for the girl to stay low, then slowly stood. The hunters froze when they saw him, their eyes narrowing in surprise. One of them barked words in their alien tongue, pointing at Daniel's bag. Another raised his weapon, demanding something Daniel could not understand. But he knew what they wanted. They thought he had stolen the girl. Daniel raised his hands, calmly, trying to show he was not looking for a fight. But the girl cried out from behind the log, "No, don't give me back." Her voice cracked with terror, echoing through the trees. The hunter's eyes lit up with recognition, their cruel smiles spreading wide. They stepped forward eagerly, their weapons raised. Daniel's expression hardened. He grabbed the burning branch from the fire pit and held it like a sword. The hunters laughed, mocking him, their voices filled with arrogance. But Daniel's grip was steady, his stance unshaken. "I said you're not taking her," he muttered, his voice like steel. The first hunter lunged. Swinging his weapon, Daniel dodged quickly, swinging the burning branch into the hunter's chest. Flames licked the alien's armor, and he roared in pain, stumbling back. The second hunter rushed in, but Daniel threw a rock at his face, stunning him. For a moment, the girl watched with wide eyes, her hands covering her mouth in shock. The fight was brutal, fast, and uneven. Daniel was only one man, with no armor, no blade, only fire and courage. But he fought with everything inside him, every swing fueled by the promise he had made. The hunters underestimated him, expecting fear, but finding fury instead. The forest filled with the sound of roars, shouts, and the crack of burning wood. At last, the remaining hunters stepped back. Shouting to the others, the 3 of them retreated into the trees. Snarling threats in their own language, they would not give up easily. But for now, Daniel had won. He dropped the burning branch, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Sweat dripped down his face, but his eyes burned with determination. The girl crawled out from behind the log, her glowing eyes shining with tears. She ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "You fought them," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel knelt down, brushing dirt from her face gently. "I told you," he said softly. "I won't let them take you," the girl sobbed, clinging to him tighter. Her small voice broke through her tears. "Why? I am nothing. They said I was too small, too weak." Daniel's eyes softened, his voice steady. "You are not nothing. You are worth protecting." Her heart broke open at his words, tears running down her cheeks as she buried her face in his chest. For the first time in her life, she felt safe, but in the shadows of the forest. The hunters were not gone. They watched from a distance, their eyes filled with hatred and shame. They would return, stronger, with more numbers. The bond between the human and the alien girl had been tested, but greater trials still waited, and in the days to come, both would learn what it truly meant to fight for each other. The forest was restless that night. The fire crackled weakly, its glow pushing back the darkness only a little. Daniel sat close to the flames, his arm resting on his knee, his breathing still heavy from the fight. Beside him, the tiny alien girl curled under his jacket, her glowing eyes wide and filled with fear. She had not spoken since the hunters left, only held the wooden bird close to her chest. Daniel studied her quietly. Her small frame shook even though the fire was warm. He wanted to speak, to comfort her, but he knew the weight of her silence. She was not just scared of the hunters, she was scared of the truth they carried with them, and Daniel could feel that truth pressing closer. Like a storm ready to break, hours passed, until at last her small voice broke the silence. "They won't stop," she whispered, her lips trembling. "They will come back. With more, with stronger ones." Daniel turned toward her, his voice steady. "Then we'll fight again." Together, her eyes widened, glowing brighter in the dark. "Together, but I am nothing." Daniel shook his head, his voice sharp but kind. "Don't say that. You're not nothing. You are someone worth protecting." Her lips quivered, tears filling her glowing eyes. For a moment, she wanted to believe him, but the lies inside her heart were heavy. She whispered again, "Then why did they leave me behind?" The words hung in the air like a knife. Daniel's chest tightened. Realizing she had never spoken of her past before, he leaned closer, his tone gentle. "Tell me, what happened?" Her hands gripped the wooden bird tightly, her small body curling in on itself. She closed her eyes, and the truth began to spill out in broken whispers. "I was born too small," she said softly. "My people. They said I would never be strong enough, never be useful." Her voice cracked. "They said I was a burden." She shivered as memories returned. "So one night, they left me in the forest, left me to die." Her tears fell onto the jacket, each drop shining in the firelight. Daniel's fists clenched, his jaw tight. He wanted to shout, to rage against the cruelty of a people who would abandon their own child, but he forced his voice to remain calm for her sake. "They were wrong," he said firmly, his eyes burning with conviction. "You are not weak. You have survived. All this time on your own." The girl shook her head, her tears flowing faster. "No. I only survived because you found me," she whispered. Daniel reached out slowly, his hand gentle as it rested on her small shoulder. "You lived until I found you," he corrected softly. "That means you are stronger than they ever knew." Her glowing eyes lifted to his, filled with confusion and fragile hope. The night carried on, but the truth had broken her heart open. She whispered the words that had been carved into her soul for so long. "They told me no one would ever want me, that no one would ever keep me." Her tiny hands clutched the wooden bird as if it were her only proof of existence. Daniel's voice rose with anger and kindness. "They were wrong. I want you here, and I will keep you safe." The girl's lips parted, her breathing sharp. She had never heard such words before, never imagined a human would speak them. Her small body trembled. But this time it was not from fear, it was from breaking chains. Her tears spilled freely as she buried her face into his chest. Her sobs muffled in his shirt. Daniel held her gently, his hand resting on her back, steady as stone. "You are not worthless," he whispered. "You are not a burden, not to me." His words wrapped around her like a shield, breaking through. The years of lies, for the first time, she allowed herself to believe, even just a little. Her whisper came broken and soft. Then, "Can I stay with you?" Daniel smiled faintly, his voice warm. "For as long as you want." The fire burned low. But the bond between them burned brighter. In the shadows of the trees, unseen eyes glowed once more. The hunters had not gone far, they whispered among themselves, their anger sharp, their pride wounded. The human had humiliated them, had taken the child they had marked as worthless, and they could not allow such shame to remain. But the girl, unaware of the eyes watching, felt something new inside her chest. She had always carried fear, always carried pain, but now she carried something else, hope. Her tiny hand slipped into Daniel's sleeve. Clutching it gently, she whispered, "Maybe I am not nothing after all." And Daniel, his voice steady, answered, "You never were," that night. Under the watch of enemies and the weight of new truths, the girl did not fall asleep alone. She rested with her head against the human's arm, her body finally still. And though the storm was not over, though danger still lurked, her heart found its first taste of peace. The truth had cut deep, but in that pain, something stronger was born. Not a fragile thread anymore, but a bond unbreakable. And when the hunters returned, as Daniel knew they would not face a weak child and a lone man. They would face something far more powerful: trust, love, and the fire of humanity. The forest was silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of eyes watching from the shadows, of danger waiting to strike. Daniel felt it before he saw it, the weight of unseen presence pressing against his back. The tiny, alien girl stirred beside him, clutching the wooden bird against her chest. Her glowing eyes flickered with fear, as if her heart already knew the hunters had returned. The crack of a branch broke the stillness. From between the trees, the hunters emerged once more. But this time, there were more of them. 5 figures stepped into the clearing, their weapons gleaming, their faces twisted with anger. The leader snarled, his voice sharp in their alien tongue. His weapon raised toward Daniel. The girl whimpered, pressing closer to the human. Whispering, they came back. Daniel stood, placing himself in front of her, his voice steady, his eyes burning. "I told you before, you're not taking her." The hunters laughed cruelly, circling like wolves around prey. One shouted, pointing at the girl, and the others jeered, calling her weak, worthless, abandoned. Her small hands trembled, her tears returning. But Daniel's hand reached back, steadying her shoulder. "Don't listen to them," he said firmly. "You are not what they say." Her glowing eyes lifted to him, filled with fear but also with trust for the first time. She believed him more than she believed the lies of her own people. The hunters lunged forward and the fight began. The clearing exploded with shouts, roars, and the crack of weapons against wood and stone. Daniel fought with fire and fury. He swung burning branches through rocks and moved with the desperation of a man who had everything to lose. The hunters struck hard, their blades slicing the air, their strength greater than his. But Daniel did not fall, his arms and legs carrying him with relentless will. Every strike, every step, was not for himself, was for the tiny alien girl behind him. The girl watched, her body trembling, torn between terror and awe. This human was bleeding. Bruised, outnumbered, yet he never stepped aside. She had been told all her life that humans were monsters, but now she saw the truth. The only monster in this forest was the cruelty of those who had abandoned her. The human was her shield, her protector, her family. One hunter managed to strike Daniel across the shoulder. Blood spilled, but he did not stop. He roared in defiance. Shoving the attacker back with the weight of his body, another hunter lunged for the girl, but Daniel blocked the path. Grabbing the weapon with his bare hands, his knuckles bled, but his grip did not break. The girl's glowing eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only tears of fear, they were tears of strength. Tears born from realizing the truth of who she was. Her small voice rang out, breaking the chaos. "I am not nothing," she cried, her voice sharp like lightning. The hunters froze, shocked by her words. She stepped forward, clutching the wooden bird tight, her glowing eyes blazing. "You left me to die because I was small, 'cause I was weak," she shouted. "But this human, he saw me. He fought for me, he chose me." Her tiny chest rose with courage she had never felt before. "And I choose him." Her words cut deeper than any weapon. The hunters snarled, but their faces showed doubt. Their power shaken, Daniel used that moment, swinging hard with the burning branch. Forcing them back, one by one, the hunters stumbled, retreating into the shadows with curses and rage, until at last the clearing was silent once more. Daniel dropped the branch, his chest heaving. His arms trembling with exhaustion, he fell to one knee, blood staining his shirt. The girl ran too. Him, her small hands clutching his face, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're hurt," she cried, her voice breaking, but Daniel smiled faintly, whispering, "I told you. I won't let them take you." She shook her head, her tears falling onto his skin. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why? Why do you care so much?" Daniel's eyes softened, his voice quiet but steady. "Because no one deserves to be left alone, and because you are worth more than they will ever see." Her heart ached, breaking and healing all at once. She hugged him tightly, her small frame pressed against his chest. Her whisper was soft but powerful. "Please, don't ever leave me." Daniel's arms wrapped around her gently, his voice firm. "Never." The fire burned low, the forest quiet once more. But within that silence, something new had been born. The tiny alien girl was no longer just a frightened child. She was someone who had faced her fears, spoken her truth, and chosen her protector. And Daniel was no longer just a traveler in the forest. He was her shield, her family, her hope. Together, they had survived the storm as dawn broke. Light spilling across the trees, the girl slipped her hand into his, her glowing eyes no longer filled only with fear, but with trust and warmth. She whispered, "I am not nothing. Because you showed me I am something." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "You are everything." And together, they walked out of the forest toward a new beginning. The galaxy would one day hear of this story, the story of a tiny alien who begged not to be eaten, and the human who showed her kindness instead of cruelty. And when they did, they would remember the truth that sometimes humanity's greatest strength was not power or weapons, but love.